Well, welcome to this latest version of Church at Home. I'm Father Ed Estock.
Father Michael Pekosik.
Father Joshua Trefny.
And we are contemplating the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And we have maybe a negative around to the positive not going in our conversation. Because we're hearing two messages, particularly from the first reading and from the gospel text. And one of those messages is the arrogance of the children of this world, if you will. So in a sense, I don't want to call us the enemies of God, but when we are fighting against God's purposes, it oftentimes emerges as arrogance, meaning we are taking more credit to ourselves than and that we should be attributing to God. And of course, the opposite, if we will, of our not, is the humility or the littleness of children that Jesus is recommending.
So there's in our first reading that the wicked, that's what they're called in that book, in the Book of Wisdom. The wicked are presuming too much. They're arrogant. They know more than God. They're going to do these things. They know more than the just person, and they're going to use their knowledge to hurt that person, and so to prove their point. And that arrogance is something that maybe we don't have it to that extreme, but we all at times do what these people did, and that we presume, we assume that the things that we have are things that we earned, that aren't gifts, that we deserve. That presumption of deserving is something that can be a very dangerous path for us. And that kind of leads us into the gospel, where the apostles, the disciples, right, they're talking behind Jesus's back a little bit, and they're discussing who is the greatest among them, because
can you imagine that conversation?
That's nice. It's a little presumptuous, a little prideful, a little arrogant. They think one of them is better than the others, and who's first in line here, and so that's really this connection of this presumption, this arrogance that goes through these two readings, where if even the apostles did it sometimes, I'm sure there's some part of us that's done it before too. I certainly have struggled.
Yes. I don't know, Father Michael, what you think of Father Joshua's suggestion that we don't get into this. It seems to me.
Well, I think it's very much a part of the human condition, that we often don't default to a position of humility. We often lack humility, and we think that everything that we have, we've earned, that we've somehow deserved it, as Father Joshua was pointing out. And that's really what was driving the apostles' conversation in this case, because if they earned their position with Jesus, if they earned their discipleship, well, then obviously there must be a rank here. We must, I must be better than you, I must be better than him, whatever the case might be. So I think you were getting to the point to say that, if they suffered from it too, we can't withhold ourselves from the same accusation. We probably do the same thing at times in our own lives.
Yeah, I was thinking, as you were talking about the Chosen, we've been watching some of the episodes of The Chosen. I know many of you are doing so as well. And we see this gospel text, and that's what these people in the movie, the series of The Chosen, they are taking this situation and this problem of arrogance and competition and trying to vie for control of the group and control of Jesus, and they have woven it into all the stories now. You can see that the apostles are sniping at one another, and who are you, and who are you to say that to me? If I'm glad I never did to our Lord what you did to our Lord, and that kind of thing.
They're very human in that show.
Yeah, I think of it. Where it comes out in my life most often is probably in my opinions, even as well thought out as they are, theologically sound, maybe psychologically secure, etc.
It's very humble of you to say.
Well,
I'm
well,
sorry.
part of humility is, Father, which
That's
you will
right,
learn,
right,
which
right.
you haven't learned yet, is to tell the truth. And so, I can arrogate to myself, which means to take, in a sense, credit upon myself, not necessarily in my thinking, but in my attachment to my opinion and my ideas. So, so
it's like not just you, but all of us.
Right.
Like it's mine. I came up with this, and so it has to be right.
And how can you disagree with this well-reasoned point? And so that doesn't make for the best conversation partner or friends or colleagues at work. So this arrogance and or lack of humility
causes a lot of problems.
Right. It really cuts us off from the Lord in this case, because as Father Michael was saying, if the disciples are preoccupied with this stuff, they obviously, and so when Jesus says, "What were you talking about?" He knew what they were talking about. He says they went silent. It's like, oh no, he heard or he knows what we were talking about. Because
they got caught.
Right. And they knew that they were having a separate conversation, or they were separating themselves from his will, his desire, his plan. And so it's important for us to keep in mind that the disciples are definitely suffering from their arrogance and lacking in the humility. So,
so what's the flip side of that, right? So Jesus hears them, knows what they're talking about, sees this kind of this difficulty that they're struggling with, this pridefulness, this arrogance, and he says, "Okay, you're taking this stuff on yourself. You need to be like a child. You need to be humble, small, little, independent." And so he shows them
on
this
me.
child, and teaches them what it's like to be childlike, to be dependent on what God is doing. And instead of saying, "I earned this stuff, I deserve this stuff," Jesus says we need to be thanking God because we receive everything as a gift, just as a child receives everything as a gift.
Right. And so along with the thankfulness of humility, because we recognize where all the blessings come from, where all the great ideas come from, where the truth comes from, but we also can become more reliant upon. And so for us religious people, not us religious people, all y'all, religious people trying to grow in the spiritual life in holiness, it seems to me that we could amend our practice, I don't know how often you humbly bow your head in prayer before you speak, before you have to give a presentation at work. How humbly are you dependent upon God for all his gifts and all our gifts? So this humility, in other words, to see things and life and self as God sees us, and then act that way.
That's the real struggle.
So I don't know if this has been true for you, Father Michael, but to be more consciously dependent upon God's grace.
That's right. That's what this gospel ultimately is, I think, calling us to do, and not to be childish. In this case, and to make a distinction between childish and childlike. Childish being, in a sense, immaturity, but of course, in being childlike, like Father Joshua said, to be dependent and trusting upon the Lord and to receive the gifts of His grace that He gives us freely, and not go out there and think that we have somehow earned or deserved them, but to be like the child, to depend on God, and which is to be humble. Absolutely.
Right. So if we could begin to express it, I have a dear friend, and I've watched him in public life a long time, and he is always, before he has to say something challenging to somebody, he said, I hope you understand what I'm saying. I hope this won't offend you, what I'm about to say. Or I hope you, can hear what I'm saying. And it's just now he does it as a kind of habitual thing, which I could really learn from that. But so this humility can be worked out in our prayer life, in our personal life, in our choices, but also and especially in our public life, our social life. We can think, I think Paul says it, everyone should think of themselves as more lowly than the other person. So if everybody's doing that, then unlike the disciples and unlike ourselves, it seems to me that invites people in, and it, instead of pushing people into their corners, it invites people into the center, and that's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
Great.
So let us humbly walk after God this week, and God bless you all.
Peace.